Hi, guys. Sorry we're about 3 minutes late. It's nice to see you again. And this is Richard Sachs. I'm your host on Lost Arts Radio, and this is Lost Arts Radio Live, which is a show where we just review some of the important developments in the news of the week and what they mean. I would say, and since we're a little bit late, I'll just talk a little bit faster. I've got probably 3 times as much here to go through as we have time for, so try to fit as much of it in as possible. I think when you're looking at the major events of the week, that the border crises that continue to be a big issue in the U.S. and Europe and other places are still really important, and they have been for quite a while now. Other parts of the world too, besides the U.S. and Europe, like some of the borders of Venezuela and South America, where anyone who can escape is trying to flee from, I guess you would call it, the latest socialist utopia that's been created there by Maduro and others helping him into neighboring countries, and they don't want that to happen. So they're trying to guard their borders as carefully as possible. And in the U.S., I would say that both of the two major political parties are involved in trying to destroy their own country as fast as possible. The Democrats by openly pushing national suicide in as many ways as they can. And it's just incredible to me that the media and the educational system and other elements in society have been so successful in brainwashing us in America so that we go along with these parties, even if what they're saying is complete nonsense. And I'm not singling out either one because they're both really bad. It's just that the Democrats are going for open, all-out evil and socialism and open borders and post-birth abortion, which means murdering children. Well, abortion means murdering children anyway, but this is murdering them after they're breathing air, which should be obvious even to Democrats, but apparently it's not to most of them. And the Republicans are helping to destroy the country too by aiding some of these programs like funding of Planned Parenthood and other totally immoral and unethical causes, and unconstitutional too. They're not allowed to give tax money to things that are not enumerated in the Constitution as powers of the federal government, but they do it anyway. And the Republicans, most of them are refusing to do their job. They tried to sabotage the current president when he was just running for office and change the rules so he wouldn't get nominated and all kinds of incredible stuff because they all work for the same nefarious covert interests. And but back to the border issue, because I'm in a hurry and I'm trying to jump ahead. But why is the border issue such a big problem in Western countries, Europe and the U.S. primarily, but some other places too? The ones that still had any independence are being destroyed from the inside by letting people in, some of whom are great, nice people, but, if they're really nice people, they should go through legal channels like all the existing immigrants filling up all these countries already did. It's very disrespectful to legal immigrants for the illegal aliens to just be let in with no vetting process and no legal protocol. And the media, which in America, the mainstream corporate media is completely criminal, is just, they're using word games. They're calling illegal aliens undocumented immigrants, right? So they sound like, oh, they're just another kind of immigrant. And the people who want to protect the borders are anti-immigrant, all this complete nonsense. I'll try to keep polite language here. And an amazing number of people in America are just falling for it. Not everybody, fortunately. But a lot of people don't want to know the real situation and the reasons for things, because basically it's really scary for them to realize what's going on in the world. And people have been taught for thousands of years, really, to be fear-based. And when you're fear-based, you're weakened and you don't have clear vision. You think that if you're afraid subconsciously, if you're afraid all the time, it's going to somehow keep you safe, or at least let you know when something really terrible is going to happen. But the obvious reality is fear has never helped anybody. It doesn't even make you more athletic or anything like, the fastest sprinters in the world are not afraid when they run 100-meter dash. And if they were, they'd probably trip or something. It's just fear is useless. Um, the greatest fighters in martial arts, they're not afraid. Um, they don't need fear to make them more skilled or athletic or tough or anything like that. You certainly don't need fear to give you a clear mind. It does the opposite. And when you're looking at what's going on to destroy Western countries and the Eastern ones that aren't already destroyed, and some of the Eastern European ones are fighting back against this stuff, but it was warned of by Eisenhower and President Kennedy. So really you can't object no matter which party you think you're, identified with. If you're a Republican, then you might listen to President Eisenhower, who said that you really should beware of the military-industrial complex because it can take over control of the world, which is not a good thing because it's not motivated because it likes you so much. It's got its own motives. And Kennedy said there was a small controlling group that is a threat to the world. And while Eisenhower was calling it the military-industrial complex, Kennedy called it a monolithic conspiracy. And this was before they invented the term conspiracy theory, so people couldn't object to him using that word. But he was very focused and clear in what he meant. That was right before he got killed by the same conspiracy that he was talking about, with Johnson and other people, leading the charge. And so there was a result of the conspiracy that he's gone. And what does that conspiracy want? If we're willing to understand that, what its goals are, then we can look at our options and find ways to change the future for the better, which I think would be really good. So if we're too afraid to look at it, and we fall for this total psyop in the American media and other medias that says if as soon as they call anything a conspiracy theory, that means you're really stupid to even think about it. It was a brilliant psychological plan, and it was originally the reason it's called, the term they invented was called conspiracy theory, is because the government and the people behind the murder of John Kennedy wanted everybody to believe it was just one crazy murderer with no connections to anybody who killed Kennedy. And that was clearly not true, because anybody that was close to the shooting saw that his body moved in two different directions, forward and back. And you can't do that with one, as they say, magic bullet. So in order to stop people from thinking about that, they invented the CIA, I guess it was, that invented the term conspiracy theory, meaning that there was more than one person involved in killing President Kennedy, which there were. There were a lot of people involved in it within the power structure, some of them within the official government, up to the vice president. And so they said conspiracy theory, that's any kind of idea that goes against the approved government version of reality that you're supposed to believe. And therefore anybody that believes in a conspiracy theory, originally that multiple people killed Kennedy, they're crazy, and you just should ignore them. But now, even though it's been proven that it was a conspiracy that killed Kennedy, that term is still used to ridicule people who think anything that's not government approved. And it's up to you whether you fall for that, the pressure, the social pressure of being called a conspiracy theorist. And in fact, if you are, sometimes it means you're on the right track. So the reality, though, is that we don't all have to be fighting each other and say, well, I'm a Democrat and I'm a Republican and I'm a conservative or liberal or fascist or communist or socialist or atheist or whatever. Everybody's actually more than that. And when you get down to the bottom of it, underneath the layers of programming, nobody's physical. They're built out of consciousness, wearing these amazing costumes, but underneath we're the same, and we've got the same interests. So this idea of fighting each other and condemning and hating people that disagree is a really stupid use of our energy. racism and division by classes and sexes and ages and whatever reason they can think of to make you feel separate from other people. It's not very smart on our part to fall for any of that stuff. But it's it's exactly what the rulers in charge of most of the world now want us to do. So it'd be wise for us to stop with the fighting for a while and long enough to look at what's behind the events that we see around us happening in the world. And that's kind of the part of the purpose of this program. All this is just a short glimpse into the events of the week. We don't have a lot of time to go into it in great detail. But we can ask, what's the goal of the people who run that monolithic conspiracy that John Kennedy was warning about? Some people say their goal is total control, and they talk about Agenda 21, which you really should learn about. And it's like what Rosa Koire described here. Rosa, Koire, I think is how she spells her name. She's got a great video on YouTube, at least it's up there last time I looked. And it's called Behind the Green Mask, and she's got other ones too, and that's a really good one. And it explains what Agenda 21 is about for the inventory and control of every item on the planet. So some people say that the motive of that conspiracy is about control, but they make sense on the surface, but there's a lot more to it happening underneath besides control. Agenda 21 is now being implemented all over the world. And like I said, it's for inventory and control of every living and non-living thing on the planet, as Rosa said. Internet of Things is part of it. And even the current president of the United States, who I won't name because I don't want to get knocked off the air any faster than we have to. And by the way, if that happens, or when it happens, because we could get into some controversial topics on this show, as you might have guessed, find us on lostartsradio.com, and especially write down brighteon.com, BRIGHTEON.com, a great site that's an alternative to YouTube, started by Mike, our friend, and his last name is Adams. Can't say them together because the bots will pick it up. He's been banned off YouTube and everywhere, and it's a great new site, but it needs more people to come and watch things there. We've got lots of videos there that you can see. Anyway, Internet of Things is part of the technology to make Agenda 21 goals possible. And along with that, the populations are going to be pushed into really dense, high-rise cities where the model is people living above businesses and just walking around close by, not traveling very far, needing permission to go anywhere in driverless cars that will only take you to approved destinations with a cashless society. So if you ever have a thought that's not approved, they just turn off your cash card until you decide you really didn't mean it and come back to approved thinking. And the rural areas would be gradually cleared and rewilded, as they say, to save the earth. And I have to mention that I'm a really devoted environmentalist, and I have been since the early 60s when I started the health and aging research and things like that. But I'm talking about real environmental concerns. In other words, the ecosystem around you, the biosphere, that means everything alive on the earth, those things are intricately interwoven to keep life balanced and healthy on this planet, including us. That's our life support system. You know, it's not a partisan issue. In other words, you don't, if you're sane, which not too many of us are anymore, but let's just imagine if we were sane, we wouldn't care about the environment if we're liberals or Democrats, and not if we're conservatives or Republicans. You know, getting pushed into those labels is a way to get you unaware of everything and just fighting the other side. It's really dumb. So I suggest that we dump all those labels. So, you know, I talked about the rewilding, how they're going to let the poor wild animals come back and take over the rural areas, and we'll just be in the cities with probably food being made in factories. And a lot of the people that work for the rulers in the corporations and government agencies. They're told that this is going to be great. We're going to save the world. We're going to stop the climate from changing by giving up all our rights and paying the carbon taxes and all these really suicidally stupid things that the people supporting the Green New Deal are behind right now. They're totally out of it. And many of them are friends of mine in big organizations that are in favor of organic things. And they don't want to look at anything complicated. They just want to say, oh, green, that's good. Organic, that's good. Support it. Get all these children to support it so it looks really, like you couldn't possibly be against it. That's super lazy thinking, and it doesn't have a good result. We'll get into that a little bit later if we have time. Anyway, some of the higher up rulers think that they're going to be left when all of us are eliminated and a lot of the population dies out, and they'll be in the elite remnant. If they just do their job of serving evil good enough, then they'll be able to enjoy the planet in all their parties and games, and that'll be their playground, and it'd be wonderful. And they're right that the purpose of the ruling elite involves reducing the population. That's true. Like the Georgia Guidestones say I think they mentioned 500 million population, and you have to get rid of 6.5 billion to get down, or a little more than that to get down to that now. And the programs to do that are already underway. It's only a step on the way to their actual goal. But the programs involved with population reduction, if we're seeing them clearly, they include, just as examples, the geoengineering, which is the aerial spraying of toxic metals and biological and chemical weapons, which have been analyzed and absolutely proven. In fact, I was silly enough to write to National Weather Service this week and say, by the way, how come you're doing this spraying? Because I called them up on the phone and they said, well, you see, you're not even a scientist and you don't understand. These are ice crystals. And it's because of the atmospheric conditions. I know that is really technical. This is what he was saying, talking to me. But, trust us, that's what it is. All this, the rest of it's just a conspiracy theory. And it's clearly not. I mean, we have high-def video now of the nozzles retrofitted on the airplanes, on the wings and the body, spraying out these clouds of solid particulates being turned on and off at will, so it's not atmospheric conditions. Anyway, that's one of the things to reduce population and poison the biosphere. Chemical farming, including fertilizers, by the way, not just pesticides. And some of the conservatives think Rachel Carson and the people who were complaining about pesticides were just crazy liberals, right? That's partisan thinking, and it goes by label, and it's not intelligent. Rachel Carson was right that the pesticide industry was destroying the planet, but she radically understated the problem. That was where she was a little bit off. But it's not just the pesticides, it's the chemical fertilizers, because they mess up the nutrition of the plants so much that the insects and disease come to wipe them out because that's their job. And then the poison dealers can say, see, we told you if you don't spray poison on your plants, then the world will starve. We're actually saving the world by manufacturing pesticides. And some people actually believe that, especially the highly educated science people who are just completely brainwashed zombies that think they're so brilliant in their tunnel vision specialties that they have no idea how they're being misused. And they need to wake up. I'm not condemning them at all. We're all victims of that to some degree, but they need to shake off the ego misunderstanding of what knowledge is and start looking around, not just in their specialty. So chemical farming, drug medicine, nuclear power, petroleum industry, which hasn't been needed hasn't ever really been needed. For the last 100 years, we've had clean and free energy that makes solar and wind look like a joke. It's just being suppressed by violence and intimidation, similar to the way they treat real health information. This is a really serious situation, and I understand why people don't want to know about it, because they get really scared. But I'm just reminding everybody that If we get scared, the bad things that we're scared of don't just go away because you're scared. It's the ostrich. It's probably an insult to ostriches to compare it, but it's what they call the ostrich mentality of putting your head in the sand. All you do is waste time. And whatever time we've got, we should use it. So other ways of reducing population, microwave and millimeter wave technologies, and other allied technologies like HARP and NextRad and things like that. The whole biotech industry is a major curse to the planet. I mean, that's where GMOs come from, and improvements on nature that are not improvements, robotic replacements that are being worked on for humans, and the economic destruction, putting everybody under economic stress intentionally by the central banking system. And if you don't understand how that works, especially if you think it's going to be fixed with a minimum wage or something like that, which is completely ridiculous, read The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin, or watch his archives on Lost Arts Radio. Getting lost in television and virtual reality and screen time definitely damages people physically and psychologically, and that leads into gender confusion by that kind of psychological operation on television, where your role models get more and more insane and weak and crazy, and you subconsciously start modeling yourself, especially the kids after those, and it's combined with chemicals. But if we look, I'm sorry I'm talking so fast, but I got so much to get through here. If we look more carefully, then this is obviously not about only population reduction. That's only a step. If it was about population reduction and that's all, they wouldn't be irrevocably damaging the biosphere, because they have to live in it after that, you see. A lot of people miss that very obvious point. All of us miss obvious points. It's not a condemnation of anybody. I'm just making an observation. But it's not about population reduction. It's about extermination of all life on the planet, including all humans, and the perpetrators themselves are included too. And that makes it really hard for most people to grasp, because they say, why would our rulers want to kill themselves? That's crazy. Yeah, they're pretty crazy, but it's obviously not about money. But it's clear that it is to eliminate life in the biosphere, because the type of changes that they're making to our life support system are not partial or temporary. They're irrevocable after a certain point. Some people say that we've already passed that. Other ones say that we're close. But in any case, we don't have a lot of leeway to just sit around and do more research and things like that. Enough research has been done if you're allowed to look at it. So still the question remains, why would the rulers want to kill themselves along with all of us? Wouldn't they just want to kill us and enjoy the world for themselves, which is what they tell their middle to higher level servants? So it's not about money, as I said, and it's pretty hard to spend or make money with all life dead on the planet. That doesn't really work very well. And you can't keep enjoying any power position in the world if all the life is exterminated, because the scenery changes a lot, like there's no oxygen, and details like that make it very difficult. So I've only found one logical explanation in decades of investigating this stuff. And that is, and it's going to sound pretty strange, but that's okay. I can either sound normal and not tell you the truth, or tell you the truth and have one person out of 100 be able to relate to it. And that is that what we're witnessing is basically a ceremonial sacrifice. That's not for money. It's, if anything, it's religious. Maybe not a religion that you're familiar with yourself, but there is a doctrine in many religions, in several of the major scriptures of the world, and it's the doctrine of sacrifice, which is what they're doing. And it says, basically, with a lot of variation and detail, that if you can go ahead and kill an innocent animal or person, any kind of being that is innocent doesn't deserve to be killed, obviously, and you do it just right, according to the right ceremonial steps, then God's going to be really happy with you. and it's going to give you all kinds of things as a reward, including spiritual benefit. And these guys believe that exactly. And they have gotten to the point of saying, okay, it's all fine to kill one person or a few people or a bunch of animals or whatever. But what would be let's go right to the most beneficial sacrifice where we get the most spiritual benefit. And I haven't talked about this much on public channels, but, if we get kicked off, those of you who care know to find us on brighteon.com and lostartsradio.com. So the rulers decided, well, obviously, anybody who's looking could see the best sacrifice, kill everything. All the people, all the animals, all the insects, all the microbes, all the trees, everything. Hey, that's exactly what they're doing. And a lot of people can't grasp that, and they think, well, it's just a technical oversight. They don't have enough research to really know how to not kill everything. That's not what it is. They're not that dumb in that way, anyway. So they can't do it suddenly. They have the technology to kill us all overnight or sooner, and they're not doing it. And that's what buys us time. This actually benefits us if we want to not have this run its course, which I think would be better not to. So they have to reach certain milestones and give certain notices and all that. And it has to go out to the whole general public. Whether we pay any attention is not their concern. But they are required in their belief to give us notices, and they do that in movies, they do it in press releases, they do it in books, in white papers of the big nonprofits and stuff like that. And so they're killing us in the biosphere step by step, not suddenly. And they've chosen the mother of all sacrifices, and that's what we have a front row seat in, because we're the sacrifice. Interesting situation, but it's real. So how do some of the current news events fit into that understanding? Because if you are looking at things in the world and you think that they're all disconnected and they're all just happening at random, you don't learn as much from observing them. And it would be good to understand how they fit together. And while we're supposedly observing all these things, they actually don't even want us to be able to observe them at all. And for us to be too distracted, hating each other, condemning each other, saying, oh, look how stupid that group is over there, or this person over here, or if you're an actual racist, judging people by their nationality or skin color, that's really dumb. And what that always masks is self-condemnation. And it takes some courage to look at that, but that's where racism comes from. It's easier to just put it on somebody else and blame their whatever group they're in instead of looking at yourself. And it keeps you weak, and it keeps you unintelligent. And that's why they want to keep pushing it. And an perfect example of that this week in the events of the week is this Jussie Smollett case, where this is a black TV star. And, I don't believe in black and white and race and all that garbage. I think even the wording is stupid. I've never met a person who's totally black or totally white. But, they want to make it black and white so you can hate the other group. And if we fall for that kind of stuff, we're really stupid. And for some reason, the rulers and the Democratic Party, which is really very, very racist, it's important to them to really push the idea and the belief that America and Europe and, places like that are deeply racist. And that we have to always be thinking it's deeply racist, never get out of that. And so when it's not racist enough in real life, they actually have to hire people to show that it really is racist. And so this TV star, Jussie Smollett, hired two Nigerian brothers to assault him in the middle of the night in Chicago. They didn't do any real damage that anybody can tell, but it was an official assault, and they were very careful what to scream and say at him, supposedly. Racial slurs, and supposedly he was gay, so they had anti-gay things, and they wanted to make real clear that the reason for this attack was the president's fault, of course, not the two Nigerian brothers, but the president. And so they said, this is MAGA country, make America great again. And which shouldn't be a slogan that bothers anybody. Obviously, at least Americans, they should want their country to be wonderful and great. The brainwashing that anybody thinks that is a bad thing to say is just stunning achievement of the media to make us think that our own country becoming great would be a bad thing, or that that's racist. I mean, you don't even know what to say about that because it's so stupid. But anyway, so they were supposedly screaming, this is MAGA country, as if this is proving that if you want to make America into a great country, that means you're a racist, right? Really. There's no way it could mean that, but that's what they want you to think. And so Jussie Smollett, the supposed victim of the attack, which he had perpetrated himself, and he was so dumb that he paid the attackers with a check so it could be it was kind of humorous if it hadn't been so serious, because if it were believed and he didn't get caught, it could have helped start a race war in America, as some commentators pointed out. But fortunately, when he was going on TV and crying and saying, I don't know how I'll ever get over this, and those horrible assault people are running around free, I can't get over that, and I don't know if I'll ever get over the trauma. Well, then they caught the two guys that he hired. And he was saying, yeah, it's their fault. And they took him in jail. And eventually they said, this isn't going to be very good for us if we go to jail for something we were hired to do. So they said, okay, we'll make a deal with the Chicago police, who did a really good job investigating. And said, okay, we did it. It was all fake. And they confessed. And this was really embarrassing for Jussie Smollett, because he had just been all over national and international TV crying sincerely and saying how terrible this was, that he didn't know if he could ever get over it. And then it came out, oh, he did it. He paid for it. He arranged the whole thing. Now, he may not be the top of the group that arranged it. It plays perfectly into the Democratic narrative that America is such a racist country that we have to do something about it to stop it. And in fact, Kamala Harris, I think it was, that went on television and said, yes, this is like the most terrible hate crime, and I'm proposing a new law against lynching, because this was basically a lynching. And then she had all over the social media and stuff saying how terrible it was. And then the people he hired confessed, and he turned out to be a massive fraud, going all over national TV, crying and saying how bad it was. And she kind of deleted that tweet, I think. So anyway, Democrats like Kamala Harris and others were backing him up. I would imagine that Cortez would too, and people like that, but I didn't see it in particular. So she's got her new anti-lynching law, Kamala Harris does. And now in America, as I said, it's not just the Democrats that are horrible. Most of the Republicans, with a few rare exceptions, have been behaving like total zombies. They're the same ones that fought the current president and tried to stop him and sabotage him from getting even nominated, because they all are bought and paid for through bribes and blackmail from the same interests that control the Democrats. And they knew that the current president would not be a member of that cartel, and so they were instructed to stop him, and it didn't work. But they had a long period when they'd had complete control of both houses of Congress, and they didn't get any of the important stuff done that the president was trying to do. So most of them are all traitors too. But the Democrats have gone all out for evil, like late-term and post-birth abortion. How is that a partisan issue? It's like killing people is really bad, but killing newborn babies or babies that are trying to get born, and now with the new 4G ultrasound, the argument that the baby earlier isn't a baby, it's a thing or part of the mother's body, is exposed as complete nonsense. The Democrats, I don't know, understand this myself, and I've looked into a lot of this stuff, and I'm just amazed and impressed at the depth of the brainwashing that because they're Democrats, they think killing babies is a mother's choice and it's part of her body. What? If you're holding a baby and you're walking down the street, is that baby part of your body so you can just throw it in the street? Actually, no, it isn't. And just because it's not quite ready to breathe air doesn't mean that it's suddenly like a fingernail or something and not its own person. And there are deeper reasons to know that this is the case too. But apparently, that it's just wide out in the open now. So, the other thing too that is as obvious as the abortion deal is the open borders. Because if you don't have borders, however you have to protect them, with thousands of troops if necessary, or walls, which is much more efficient with strategic numbers of troops placed where they need to be and electronic hardware and stuff like that. If you don't have that, then in a relatively short amount of time, your country is gone because it will be overrun by people with different motives. And that is happening like today in America. And the whole Democratic Party is saying, no, it's all made up. It's not happening. I watched Nancy Pelosi say this is a crisis that the president has made up out of nothing. It is a crisis that he's created. And if you want a real crisis, the national emergency, you should, disarm the Americans and take their means of protection away. That would be a really good thing to do. So there's just mass insanity, and it shouldn't be partisan. It should be like, acknowledge what's true. Don't worry about whose party said what. But there's this overall way that the power structure at the top has been characterized, and that is something called globalism. And a lot of people don't understand what that is, but what it means is that instead of having sovereign countries with their own cultures and they get to make decisions for their own people, you have one central removed authority, like tyranny, basically, that controls all countries and their countries in name only, and nobody has any representation there, and it's too big to be represented anyway. And that's why they need to tear down the borders. It's really logical. Because if the borders are abolished, then the countries are easier to control by supranational organizations like the EU, UN, WTO, WHO, and other similar criminal organizations. And this isn't even mentioning the central banks yet. And that leads to global tyranny and the complete death of freedom on the way to extermination. And I'm not talking like this to be negative, okay? It's not. I'm saying that if we want to come up with solutions where we stop fighting each other and look, we have similar interests, we better work together and help each other and try to be intelligent and not who's right and who's wrong type of thing, then we need to know realistically what our position is. And I'm understating it. Okay, so it's not negative. And there are ways to keep your own center and keep feeling okay and clear consciousness and look at this at the same time. And we'll mention that later. But the rulers who want to accomplish this extermination program, they want to make sure we're not teaching clearly or thinking clearly. And so they're teaching complete nonsense. And they're psychologically getting us to accept things that are completely ridiculous. That you have to have your kids injected with poisonous cocktails that most doctors don't even know what's in them, which is astounding in itself. Doctors listening, how come you don't know what's in all these injections? This is unconscionable. Don't defend it, learn. And then decide whether, realize the situation you're in as a doctor, because if you tell the truth, you may lose your license. That's similar to the situation we're all in. That's why they give you a license to practice medicine. It's not to give you all these rights. It's so that they can take it away and they have you under complete control. So anyway, getting people to believe that having your kids injected with poison is really smart and it's cutting edge science and it's going to keep them safe against getting diseases, which obviously is not true, because very often the people who get the injections, I'm not saying the V word because that gets you banned faster too. The state of Washington just declared an emergency with 36 cases of the most terrifying disease. Do you know what it is? You may have heard of it. It's called measles. I had it. Everybody I know as a kid, of my contemporaries, old people, when they were little kids, we all got measles, and it wasn't a problem at all. It was on sitcoms on TV as a joke that kids got to stay home and watch cartoons, which I did. And it's not a big deal. But now, 36 cases, it's a statewide emergency in Washington state. Do you know why? So that you'll be terrified enough to take every injection of all these poisons through a hollow needle and say, oh, well, that's going to keep everybody safe and create herd immunity. It's going to be wonderful. Total nonsense. But these people who are saying it look really condescending and smart, have all kinds of degrees in white coats and stuff. They're saying what they memorized. They do not understand it. These people don't even really know what an antibody is. And I know, I'm not guessing about that. So they're teaching people that this kind of treatment works, and that it's safe and effective. That, first of all, as far as it working, antibody count has no correlation to true immunity. If that one sentence were understood, it would be the end of the whole injection fraud, and the people in charge of it would be in jail, at least, for crimes against humanity. But instead of that, we're too terrified to know that we could think for ourselves and say, wait a minute, how come the people who get these injections are getting the disease or worse? Or some of them are dying. Didn't you say it was safe and effective? How come with 1% of the people who are the parents mostly who get injured and killed kids are finding any compensation because of liability protection for the companies that administer this garbage? Even then, they paid out $4 billion for injured and killed kids from these injections because they're so safe and effective. Does that make really clear logic? I don't think so. And there are hundreds of bills that are being put together to force you to not only give these to your innocent children, but eventually to give them to all the adults too. This is a really serious issue. And the other thing that they're doing, and I got to go really fast because we're getting out of time here, is that in 10 to 12 years from now, all life on Earth is going to end because of the climate changing if we don't accept the Green New Deal. Okay, so you have to run to accept that, and these big movements that I think are getting Soros-connected funding for obvious reasons if you understand this stuff. And remember, I'm a sincere environmentalist. The Green New Deal is garbage, and it's not who's right. Find out for yourself. Analyze it. They've got this big group called the Sunrise Movement, backed by some of the organic groups that are friends of mine, and they're using little kids who have no clue what they're talking about to promote it. They don't know about the things that are actually in the Green New Deal, and this is child abuse, in my opinion. And why are these organizations like the Sunrise Movement engaged in child abuse? Now, I don't want to hear about just labels and, oh, this is environmental and it's green and we have to save the country by making it environmental, and this child abuse, because they don't know what they're talking about. And they're going to have lots of funding behind them because the funders know this is leading straight into destitution and tyranny, which is not green. Unless it means gangrene or something, it's really not good. So the Green New Deal means basically the stuff that the kids promoting it don't know about. Huge tax increases, not just on the evil rich people. The real evil rich people won't be touched by those taxes. Carbon taxes, infinite borrowing, which puts the ownership of the United States in the hands of a foreign group, foreign criminal cartel called the Federal Reserve. That's really not a good idea. Claiming that jobs are created by borrowing unpayable amounts of money is really stupid. It shows a complete lack of understanding of economics. But just because you don't understand it doesn't mean that you're not subject to it. This is not to fight the people pushing the Green New Deal. They're friends of ours. They're good people who are programmed and brainwashed, and they need to be waked up, not fought. Stop with the fighting and already. It also hands complete control of healthcare over to the medical industry that's killing about 1 million Americans a year right now with toxic chemicals that they call medicine, and hiding the real health information with intimidation and suppression and murder. And the Green New Deal gives the government agencies, in partners with these medical drug dealers, complete and monopolistic control over healthcare. That's not a smart idea. And these kids who are pushing the Green New Deal, they don't understand how central banks work, the drug medicine scam, economics, or geoengineering, which is really the main cause of destructive climate change, not the fact that you won't turn off your air conditioner. It's because primarily geoengineering and a few other things. And besides, the use of dirty energy technologies is not because free and clean energy technologies are not available. They do exist, and they've existed for over 100 years in recent times. But they're being sat on and suppressed by higher levels of the power structure. And if you don't know about that, you're going to make big mistakes supporting stupid things like the Green New Deal. It's all for socialism, and socialism has many historical experiments showing exactly what kind of a utopia it produces, and these kids are being told that that's good, and it's malicious. It's not just dumb; it's intentional. The only positive possible effect of the Green New Deal that I can think of is it might split up the Democratic Party into two factions, one of which wants the Green New Deal and the other thinks, well, don't let them know that's what we're really after, total socialism yet. And maybe those factions will fight and lose the 2020 election. Not that the Republicans are great at all. They're criminal, with a few exceptions. They have the same control by blackmail and bribes, and they have no clue about the real environmental problems that need to be addressed immediately, and so many other things. But, they're almost totally corrupt, and unaware of what's going on, I think, to a large degree. They're not doing anything to stop the censorship that's going on, and they don't know what's wrong with drug medicine and all that stuff. But the Democrats have gone all out for evil, so it's really important that they fail at everything they're trying to do, as far as I can tell. The example, for example, the idea that they had, that the Democrats, and backed up by the media, the criminal media in America, that say that borders are racist and that people with light skin and males are bad, which is racist in itself and sexist. The government should be bigger, more regulations, give up freedoms, pay carbon taxes to save the earth from climate change, and that people should be disarmed so that everything will be peaceful. This would be stupid, but it's also intentional. At the top levels, it's not, the kids that they rev up to support these things for the media and everything, but the ones at the top know that this is planetary suicide, starting with national suicide. It's being done all over Europe at the same time. Europe and the U.S. borders are being destroyed by the UN migration program, which is an absolutely criminal multi-country invasion plan to destroy societies and economies, flooding countries with poverty and disease and terrorism, part of which is religious, especially in Europe. They bring in people whose religion is, if you don't convert, you have to be either enslaved or killed. That is their religion. I've read the scriptures that they are following, or other ones like MS-13 and the gang members that Pelosi said were God's children. They are God's children, but they're sick kids, and they have to be prevented from killing everybody else, and just bringing in uncompatible cultures in general. Also, I thought it was interesting, and I've only got a few minutes here. David Icke gave an interview on 5G at Anarchapulco, which just ended a few days ago. Great event. I'm sorry I didn't get to go. I got invited, but I couldn't go. And David Icke, who's really amazing, has explained that 5G is a grid to end independent thought and perception while destroying health. And he was right. It ties together with what microwave energy experts like Barry Trower look at. The archives on Lost Arts Radio if you want to see him talking. Really interesting guy. Barry, Barrie, Trower, Trower, very interesting guy, said that by World War II, weapons had been perfected using microwave energy to control thoughts and emotions. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's military fact. And it's much, much more evolved at this point. So he was right. But it's also a clue to the solution, which we're not supposed to know about. The fact that the rulers intend to use these frequency weapons, microwaves and millimeter waves and HARP and X-rad systems and all these things working together, with the 5G kind of being like a pinnacle of it, to end any chance of escape from mind control. But remember that frequency has two sides. It's not all negative. The telecom industry has designed intentionally the frequencies that are used in the communication devices and the smart meters and all these things to be interfering with the intercellular communication of the body, not just in humans, but animals, trees, plants, insects, and all that. That's why the insects are disappearing. It's part of it anyway. But the most powerful healing frequencies, because some of them are really good, they're keeping us alive, actually. Most powerful healing frequencies are far stronger than anything the rulers have, any 5G, 10G, 100G. And we're walking around with them implanted into our physical systems. And it's totally natural and massively powerful, but dormant at the moment. So my recommendation is, why don't we wake that up? And this is important. I don't know how to emphasize it enough, but it's one of the biggest taboos, forbidden knowledge areas that the rulers have and that they don't want us to ever discover. And you can't do it by thinking about it or by memorizing some belief or something. That's the kind of thing that they would support. But something deeper has to change. And I want to read you something that, if I can find it, that was read by Owen. I can't say his whole name because he's one of the forbidden people. Yeah, I have it here. I'm sorry to waste time. Just 1 second. Here it is. He said, through action, a man, which means a man and woman, child, whoever, becomes a hero. Through action, a man or a woman or a child becomes a hero. Because children are not nothing. They're amazing beings. Through action, they become a hero. Through death, a hero becomes a legend. Through time, a legend becomes a myth. Through hearing a myth, a man, woman, or child takes action. And that was written by Ichiro Oda, who is actually alive currently in Japan. Really amazing person. But we have the innate power to change all this stuff for the better. So it's in our power. And I'd say start where you can start by, why not learn, for example, the forbidden and real health information that in America and most of the world now is suppressed by intimidation and violence and murder, killing doctors, killing anybody that wants to expose it, killing manufacturers of helpful materials, like just happened in the UK to one of our guests on our show. So get back your innate normal health and energy and ageless natural condition. It's not too late. If your body is still alive, you can still do it to a great degree, and learn to throw off the programming, because the programming is where all the chains that are restricting us are lying. It's all embedded in these programs in the mind, kind of like in the Matrix movie, but more than that. And their biggest fear is that we might ever find out how to do that, and there are ways to do it. It's not a belief system. In fact, a belief system will not do it. It's comforting to say, well, I have the right belief system and now I'm okay. And whatever I do, whatever happens, I'm great because I joined the right group. That's not going to do it. And I'm not saying to not join whatever group you want. I'm just saying, if you're really brave, if you're willing to step out on that invisible walkway across the chasm, like in Indiana Jones. What was that, number 2 or 3 or something? I think, I don't know, one of those. The walkway only appeared after he stepped out into space. And it's similar to that when you try to think of something that has been too scary to really consider up to now. But we have immense, practically limitless ability inside ourselves because of what we're actually made out of. We're not physical beings. We're wearing physical costumes. We're incredible, limitless beings, and we can accomplish almost anything good if we drop the ego junk. And, it's not that our personality is going to become like this substitute God or something. It's what the real force that's flowing through us from our source that we came from is accessible. And if we learn to do that, and there are ways to do it, then you can let it express itself through your life. If a relatively small number of us do that, all these terrible problems that I just spent an hour going over are nothing compared to what we could do. And so my suggestion is that we learn how to do that. Do it whatever way you want to, but don't be satisfied with a belief. Find the actual experience and then let it into your life and watch what happens. And that's what I would have liked David Icke to get into as step 2 of what he was explaining. So if you're interested in that, do it in whatever way feels right to you, or check out planetaryhealingclub.com. And I'll be seeing you next time. Thanks.